Greetings, prospective families and students. Professor Frank Cohen here, part of the Faculty of Political Science and Intelligence and Security Studies at Franklin Pierce University. And I want to introduce you to the programs and tell you what they're all about and give you a sense of what it might be like for someone to be a student in our program and what we hope that they will learn and the kind of skills that they will acquire over their time here. So I hope I can give a good picture of that to you. And we can't do the normal question and answer here. So the contact information for the faculty is at the end of the presentation. You'll see it there. Please feel free to call us with any questions or concerns that you have. Many times at the end of presentations, a lot of parents and students have asked about things like internships or the kind of jobs that folks can get, stuff like that. I'm going to try and discuss some of that here, but it always seems to be what's pressing on people's minds. And so please do reach out to us. So let me just show you what the program's about. I'm going to just show you here. And this is This is Petrucelli Hall, and these are where our offices are, and also where our classrooms are as well. So this is where your students will be spending a lot of their time as political science or intelligence and security studies students. And I'll briefly go over the requirements with you. I'd rather talk about the logic of the requirements before I just go through them piece by piece. What you can see here is that we have what we have are really stages of academic and scholarly, and I would even say career development for students. We take them through the first year experience. We get them to understand the methods by which they conduct research and do analysis. We give them a set of foundations. We then move them through an advanced level of coursework, which is very heavily project-based learning and highly applied, really applying everything they've learned in foundations and then what the theories they learn in the advanced courses. And then they all end up in a capstone their senior year. All the political science majors do. And that capstone is really focused on getting them to reflect on their whole time here, put together a portfolio, really get into career preparation and development, whether they're thinking about graduate school, law school, or the job marketplace as well. So that's sort of a quick summary of the progression that you see here. So let me just go through it in some kind of detail. So in the first year, all freshmen will take one of these two electives here, and this is sort of just getting their feet wet in political science thinking as well. These courses are very topical, they're sort of fun and interesting, and of course they're going to encounter other students who are taking them for their general education credits as well. We steep all students in research methods, in methodology. This is where they learn how to do research design, that is design research from the very beginnings all the way to the very end. So they learn the fundamental principles of research design. They learn how to collect and gather both qualitative and quantitative data. They learn how to perform data analysis and how to do a little bit of statistical research. And these are all really very important skills, not just in political science, but honestly in any field of endeavor. These are the kinds of things that you need to know. We have then we steep students in the foundations of political science. Everyone takes so besides taking research methods, everyone takes a course in U.S. government where they understand the Constitution and how it drives the political process, and they get a sense of how Congress works, the courts work, the chief executive works, the presidency, where the public fits in, where interest groups fit in, how voters play a role, how campaigns and elections are run. So they get some foundations in basically in the American political system there. Then they study the international political system. This is where students study geopolitics, international relations, and the interactions among all the nations of the world in diplomacy, trade, conflict, and commerce. Students take a course in comparative politics. This is where they understand how people around the world are governed. So they study many nations across the world, in all the major regions of the world, in Latin America, in Western and Eastern Europe, in East Asia, in the Pacific Rim countries, in Africa. And so they understand how other nations' political systems work, not just how US government works. So as you can see, there's a very strong, they do get a nice domestic focus on American politics and government, but they also get a very global perspective as well. That's very important to us. Every student, pardon me, has to take a course in political theory. This is really a basic introduction to political philosophy, where the students learn about the great thinkers and philosophers that have contributed to the development of political ideas that have driven politics over the centuries. And then every student needs to do a history course, a course in the history program. They do a basic survey level, 200 level course of their choice. And then students continue on into applied learning in political science, where they do their more advanced coursework. This is really where students apply everything they've learned in foundations and then some. We continue to develop more knowledge in these courses, but these courses are very focused on project-based learning. So students are really developing for a good half of the time in these courses, their own research projects. They're doing all sorts of collaborative and teamwork efforts as well. And we also try to simulate real world settings in these courses. So the applied learning is also experiential learning, because even though it's not necessarily in the real world, we try to simulate those kind of real world settings. We feel this is very important to students' career preparation and development. So these projects are very, again, application oriented. So for example, in constitutional law in Moot Court, while the students learn how constitutional law develops through Supreme Court and federal court cases, and that they actually study those decisions, what's important is that they apply all that and they create their own moot court. That is, they create their own Supreme Court or federal court case, and they actually try that case or have it heard in court. And they put that all together, and there's an individual and team component, because everyone's going to generate a legal brief, but at the same time they have to act as real legal teams in trying and hearing these cases. In campaigns, elections, and the policy process, students really get they get a very strong sense of how legislation is drafted, how domestic policy and foreign policy are developed, and where Congress and the president and the courts play a role in all of that. Students will also very closely study the electoral process and campaign strategy. So what we do is we offer this course on election year so that we could do projects that really correspond nicely to elections and campaign strategies as well. The global and international politics segment is what gives students that world perspective. And so global security and diplomacy, this is where the students will do something like, again, generate their own research on a country, but they will play the role of diplomats and put together a model United Nations. And in prosperity and freedom of the world, this is where students really, where they study the challenges of economic development in countries all over the world, and also the kind of repression and restrictions that governments place upon human rights as well. So students study the challenges posed to economic development and human rights in countries all around the world. And here, students might put together a conference on economic development and human rights. That's commonly what we've had them do in the past. And they sort of play the role of professional advisors that are giving advice to institutions like the World Bank and the United Nations Human Rights Commission. And so they create research that is applied in those simulated real-world settings as well. So a lot of this involves it really sharpens the research skills of students. And what it does is it brings into sharp relief the development that we try to instill in students in their analytical skills, their ability to do analysis, conduct research. We also to become very skilled in written communication. You know, we want our students to be excellent writers, and so we work on that a lot. We want them to be very good at oral communication and at graphic communications as well in this digital age. And the students become very well-rounded communicators and very skilled at imparting knowledge and conveying information to others. So all of the work they do in these courses, particularly in these advanced level courses, none of this work is disposable. This stuff is all shared with the general audience, and we put it all on the internet, and we create websites that host this work. We conduct conferences we'll conduct conferences in Moot Courts in our Fitzwater Center television studio. We do podcasts. All this stuff is for sharing. It's all put out on the internet. So it's intended for an audience. And what's excellent about this is that students can share these projects that they do with potential employers in the marketplace, with graduate school admissions office, with law schools as well. And they really prepare them for all those kinds of endeavors. And then they do a capstone course their senior year. And the senior year that senior seminar is where students they focus on creating a whole portfolio of the best work that they've done here. They put together all of their projects. There is a career development part of the senior seminar where we have students spend a lot of time creating and really refining their LinkedIn pages and their LinkedIn profiles and their resumes as well. And we try to populate those things as much as possible. And this is a good point to bring up internships, because by this time and during the senior year, students will have already done 1 or 2 internships, or will be in the process of doing one as well. So this is a very good time to try and document that work and put it in their portfolio as well. Part of the work that's done here too is that the students do a teamwork project. For instance, they might do something in survey research and do a survey of students on campus in some area related to politics. They also do an individual research project. They get very focused on a project that will be impressive to either grad schools, law schools, or employers as well. So we try to have that project really focus on the transition from their undergraduate years to their years following commencement, following graduation as well. So there's a lot of focus on the personal, academic, scholarly, and career development of our students. Many of them are also engaged in many extracurricular activities from many of the campus clubs. They are especially involved in student government too. And again, we try to have them document that work in their capstone course. So a lot of attention to the development here. Another thing that I like about the structure of our program is that most of the courses that the students take are really the same courses. There isn't a lot of elective choice. But what it is these are the courses that my colleagues and I, that this is what we do best. All right. And what it does for the students is it makes them colleagues. Every peer group, every entering class becomes not only a close peer group because they see each other so much in the same courses, but they also become good colleagues and really become comfortable with working together as well. I'll briefly go over our Intelligence and Security Studies minor and the requirements for this. This minor is popular among political science majors and among criminal justice majors as well. But we have some students that are interested in law enforcement that don't necessarily do criminal justice, and this seems to be a nice minor for them. So we have students, for instance, that like major in English or specialize in history, or they're in business or biology, but they're interested in the dimension of homeland security to their fields. And that's what this program does, is it has a nice practical focus on the most pressing issues facing homeland security. And it's a real innovative program where I got together with my colleagues in computer and information technology and in psychology, and we found a lot of overlap in our interest. And the result is we have this very nice interdisciplinary program that is also approved by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. So the students get a nice background in cybersecurity, in security, and that's related to military concerns, terrorism. They get a nice background in diplomacy, on the study of intelligence, on the practices of espionage as well. So it's really a terrific minor, and it's one that's really has helped contribute to the career development of our students overall. The thing that I want to explain to you here is that you can see the kind of work they've done if you go to these websites. This presentation that I'm giving you actually is one that I could easily send to you if you were to email me or call me, and you'll see our contact information at the end. But I want to show you the focus on applied and experiential learning. And these are students from both our political science major and minor and our Intelligence and Security Studies program. They have all been involved in these efforts. These are websites that they have put together of all their work so that it can be permanently shared, and it's out there for the internet and the public to see. And in all of these kind of websites, if I were to, there we go. So if I go to these websites, for instance, I'll open them up briefly. This is just an example of the kind of work that they end up doing later on. Here's our Moot Court and Constitutional Law class. The students get to post their research here. It can be shared with anybody. This is some research they did in understanding how case law works. This is where students filed their plaintiff's brief and defendant's brief in our Moot Court case. This is our Moot Court case that we did. And here is the hearing of the case that we did in front of a TV studio and audience at the Franklin Pierce University Fitzwater Center. So you could see the hearing of the case there. This is our Conference on Economic Development and Human Rights, where the students presented on the challenges of poverty and economic development. And what we're pretending to do is that we are doing this conference for the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And this is their individual research projects down here. These are the students who are on this panel. And this is a video of the proceedings. We had this video again produced in the Fitzwater Center TV studio. This is our human rights segment of the conference. All the students who participated in it. This is the video of the proceedings that we put together. And then they put together position papers as a team that they submitted to the World Bank and to the UN Human Rights Council. Again, they didn't really submit them because we were not solicited by those agencies. But again, it gives you an idea of the kind of applied and experiential learning we do. This is when our students acted like campaign consultants that worked for a fake, not real, public relations firm and a consultant firm, a consultancy. And this was analysis that they did on the 2018 midterm elections, and every student took on a toss-up race in the U.S. House of Representatives. That is races in swing districts, those that were going to be really close. And they developed a strategy actually for each of the candidates in the races, whether they were Democrat or Republican. They did it for them both. So it's really fascinating kind of work they do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it up here, and I'm going to urge you please to contact either me or my colleague. Here's our emails, my colleague, Professor Cliff, and these are our phone numbers. And since we don't have the normal question and answer period, really, please get back to me about any kind of concerns you have. What I will say is that if you are wondering about the kind of jobs your students have, they have all been very readily and gainfully employed. Even during down economic times, they are in all walks of life. Many of them are lawyers, for better or for worse. We have a lot of students that have worked in government agencies at the federal, state, and local level. We have students that are educators, that are administrators, principals in secondary and primary education. And then we have students in many sorts of businesses in the banking, finance, and retail, and all sorts, and information technology, all sorts of business fields as well. And then we have students that work for nonprofit organizations too. They're employed in all sectors of the economy, really. So it's not really just about politics and government. So I'll wrap up with that, and I hope to hear from all of you. Thank you very much for listening.